Jerry, 28 and fresh from his MBA program, arrives at First National Bank to withdraw graduation funds from his trust account. The banker's face turns pale as she stares at her computer screen. "Mr. Thompson? I'm afraid there's a problem with your account." Jerry's stomach drops. What kind of problem? She swivels the monitor toward him. The balance reads $0.00. His grandmother's $300,000 inheritance gone. His parents' signatures appear on every withdrawal authorization. His hands shake as he realizes the devastating truth about his own family's betrayal. I stared at that computer screen feeling like someone had just punched me in the gut. Zero. Not even a single penny remained of Grandma Rose's inheritance. Carol Williams, the banker, pushed her wire-rimmed glasses up her nose and pulled out a thick folder. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Thompson. These withdrawals started about 2 years ago. Your parents presented proper documentation each time." Her voice carried genuine sympathy as she spread the papers across the mahogany desk. My mind raced backward through the past 24 months. While I'd been buried in graduate school coursework, pulling all-nighters in the library, my parents had systematically drained my future. Every withdrawal slip bore their familiar signatures, along with authorizations I'd never seen before. 2 years, I managed to croak out. "Carol, can you show me the specific dates and amounts?" She nodded solemnly and began reading from her records. First withdrawal, March 15th, 2 years ago. $45,000. Purpose listed as educational expenses for family member. Educational expenses. I knew exactly where that money had gone. Madison had started her boutique business that spring, the one she'd bragged about during our monthly family dinners. She told everyone about her investor who believed in her vision for high-end women's fashion. The next major withdrawal was June 3rd of the same year, Carol continued. $75,000, listed as emergency family medical expenses. Medical expenses? What a joke. That was right around the time Madison had taken her 3-week European vacation, posting pictures from Paris and Rome on social media. She'd claimed some mysterious benefactor had sponsored her cultural research trip for the boutique. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma, my girlfriend of 2 years. "How did the bank visit go, ready to celebrate your graduation fund access?" I couldn't even respond. How could I tell her that the money I'd planned to use for our apartment down payment had vanished into my sister's designer handbags? "There's more, isn't there?" I asked Carol, dreading the answer. She flipped through several more pages. Monthly withdrawals of $5,000 to $8,000 consistently for the past 18 months. Always authorized by your parents as living expense support for family member in crisis. Living expense support. My sister had been living in a luxury downtown loft, driving a brand new BMW convertible and wearing clothes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Meanwhile, I'd been surviving on ramen noodles and library vending machine coffee, assuming my responsible saving habits would pay off after graduation. The numbers swirled in my head as Carol continued documenting the theft. Because that's what this was, theft. My own parents had stolen my future bit by bit to fund Madison's extravagant lifestyle. "Mr. Thompson, there's something else," Carol said hesitantly. "Your parents came in just last week, asking about closing the account entirely. They seemed surprised when I mentioned it was already empty." That detail hit me like a lightning bolt. They'd been planning to take even more, probably assuming there was money left. The sheer audacity of their scheme began crystallizing in my mind. I stumbled out of the bank in a daze, my phone ringing incessantly. Emma's number flashed on the screen. "Jerry, what's wrong? You sound terrible," she said the moment I answered. "Em, I need to see you. Can you meet me at Riverside Park? Bring tissues." 40 minutes later, I sat on our favorite bench, overlooking the water, watching Emma's expression transform from concern to horror as I explained everything. Her dark eyes flashed with protective anger. "They stole your inheritance to spoil Madison, Jerry. This is criminal. You have to do something." But they're my parents, Em. How do I fight my own family? She took my hands in hers, her voice steady and determined. Sometimes family hurts us the most because they think they can get away with it. Your grandmother left that money specifically for you, not for Madison's shopping addiction. That evening, I drove to my childhood home in the suburbs, my mind churning with confrontation scenarios. The circular driveway displayed Madison's BMW alongside my parents' matching Mercedes sedans, 3 luxury cars purchased with money that should have been mine. Through the living room window, I watched my family laughing over dinner. Madison gestured animatedly, probably sharing stories about her latest purchase. My mother smiled indulgently, while my father nodded with approval. They looked so content, so satisfied with their deception. I couldn't bring myself to go inside. Instead, I sat in my beat-up Honda Civic, watching the people I'd trusted most in the world continue their charade. My phone rang suddenly, startling me from my surveillance. Jerry. It's your Aunt Linda. I was just talking to your mother about your graduation. She mentioned you've been having some financial troubles lately. Financial troubles. My blood boiled. What exactly did she tell you, Aunt Linda? Well, she said you've been making some poor investment choices and that they've been trying to help you learn financial responsibility. She seemed worried about your judgment with money. The manipulation ran even deeper than I'd imagined. They weren't just stealing from me. They were destroying my reputation to justify their theft. My aunt's voice carried genuine concern, completely unaware she was spreading my parents' lies. Aunt Linda, I need to ask you something important. Have my parents borrowed money from anyone in the family recently? Oh, honey, your father mentioned they'd had to help Madison through some business difficulties, but they said you'd been asking them for loans too, and they were trying to teach you both responsibility. I hung up, shaking with rage and disbelief. They'd crafted an entire narrative, painting me as financially irresponsible, while positioning themselves as the concerned, generous parents trying to help their struggling children. This wasn't just theft anymore. This was character assassination, reputation, destruction, and emotional manipulation on a scale I'd never imagined possible from the people who were supposed to love and protect me. Sitting in that driveway watching my family's perfect suburban tableau, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to stay quiet. I wasn't going to accept their version of reality, and I definitely wasn't going to let them get away with stealing my future. But first, I needed to understand exactly how deep this betrayal went. And something told me I'd only scratched the surface of their deception. The next morning, I called in sick to my new job at the consulting firm and began my investigation. Emma had agreed to help, bringing her forensic accounting background from her work at the audit company. We spread out at her kitchen table with laptops, notepads, and a pot of strong coffee. Start with social media, Emma suggested. Madison posts everything she does. We can build a timeline of her expenses. Scrolling through Madison's Instagram felt like watching a documentary about wealth and excess. Photos from the past 2 years told the story of systematic theft disguised as sisterly support. Her boutique's grand opening had featured a champagne reception that clearly cost thousands. The European vacation included first-class flights, 5-star hotels, and shopping sprees in designer districts. Look at this, I showed Emma a photo from 8 months ago. Madison stood beside a display case in her boutique caption reading, "Grateful for the angel investor who believed in my dreams. Angel investor." My stomach twisted as I realized Madison might not even know the truth. She'd been told some story about mysterious financial support, never suspecting it came from her brother's inheritance. Emma pulled up Madison's LinkedIn profile. Her business failed after 6 months, but look at these posts about her transition period and exploring new opportunities. The timeline became clearer as we dug deeper. The business failure coincided with the largest withdrawals from my account, the monthly payments Carol had mentioned. My parents hadn't just funded Madison's startup dream, they'd bankrolled her entire lifestyle when that dream collapsed. "We need to see the actual receipts," Emma said. If we're going to build a case, we need documentation. That afternoon, I drove to Madison's apartment complex. The Riverside Towers commanded premium rent in the city's most desirable neighborhood. The doorman recognized me from previous visits and waved me through to the elevator. Madison's roommate Amanda answered the door, looking surprised to see me. "Oh, hey, Jerry, Madison's at her yoga class, but she should be back soon. Come on in." Amanda Foster had grown up wealthy and possessed the casual attitude toward money that came with never questioning its source. As she offered me coffee, I noticed designer shopping bags stacked by the door. "Madison's been having quite the shopping therapy session," Amanda laughed. "She found this incredible personal shopper who's been helping her rebuild her wardrobe. Says she's got some family support during this career transition." Family support. There it was again. The sanitized version of theft my parents had constructed. "Amanda, can I ask you something? Do you know where Madison gets the money for all this?" I gestured around the luxury apartment. Amanda's expression shifted slightly. "Well, her parents help out sometimes. And I think there was some inheritance money from a grandparent. She doesn't really talk about the details, but she's not stressed about rent or anything. Inheritance money, my inheritance money." When Madison returned an hour later, sweaty from her hot yoga class and carrying another shopping bag, she seemed genuinely happy to see me. That made what I had to do so much harder. "Jerry, what a surprise. Are you here for dinner I could cook, or we could order from that new Thai place?" Looking at my sister, really looking at her, I saw someone who'd been living in a bubble of artificial prosperity. Her designer workout clothes probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her handbag was the same brand I'd seen celebrities carrying in magazines. "Madison, we need to talk about your money situation." Her smile faltered slightly. "What do you mean I'm doing fine?" "Mom and Dad have been really supportive during my career transition." "Where do you think that support money comes from?" She settled onto the expensive leather sofa, her expression growing confused. "I assumed they were just helping out like parents do. They said Grandma Rose had left some money for family emergencies, and my business situation qualified. Grandma Rose had left money for family emergencies." The manipulation was even more sophisticated than I'd imagined. My parents had taken my specific inheritance and reframed it as general family support, making Madison feel grateful instead of guilty. Madison Grandma Rose left that money specifically to me. $300,000 in a trust fund with my name on it. "Mom and Dad have been withdrawing from my inheritance to pay for your lifestyle." The shopping bag slipped from her hands, expensive cosmetics scattering across the hardwood floor. "That's not possible. They wouldn't do that. You're confused about something." I pulled out the bank statements Emma had helped me organize. "Look at the dates, Madison. Every time you made a major purchase or took a trip, there's a corresponding withdrawal from my trust fund." Her face went through a series of expressions: confusion, denial, horror, and finally understanding. "The boutique startup money, $45,000 from my account. The European research trip, $25,000. The monthly support they've been giving me, $5,000 to $8,000 every month for 18 months. Madison sank deeper into the couch, her face pale. "Jerry, I swear I didn't know. They told me it was family money available for helping us both get established. I thought they were just being generous parents." There's more Madison. "They've been telling other family members that I'm financially irresponsible, that they're trying to teach me better money management. They're destroying my reputation to justify their theft." She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "This explains so much. When I thanked them for their generosity, they always seemed uncomfortable. And they made me promise not to discuss the financial help with anyone, said it would cause family jealousy." The full scope of the manipulation became clear as Madison and I talked through the past 2 years. My parents had isolated us both with selective information, keeping us from comparing notes or asking questions that might expose their scheme. "What are we going to do?" Madison asked, her voice small and ashamed. "I don't know yet, but I'm meeting with Tyler Jackson tomorrow. Apparently our parents have been talking to mutual friends about my supposed financial problems." The next day, Tyler met me at our old college hangout, a sports bar near campus. He looked uncomfortable from the moment he sat down. Jerry, man. I wasn't sure I should tell you this, but your parents came to my wedding last month and made some concerning comments. What kind of comments? They were asking about your job prospects, saying they were worried about your decision-making skills. Your dad mentioned something about risky investments and poor financial judgment. Your mom seemed really stressed about it. My hands clenched into fists under the table. Tyler, I need you to know that everything they told you was a lie. I've never made any risky investments. I've never asked them for money, and my decision-making skills are just fine. I explained the trust fund situation, while Tyler's expression grew increasingly angry on my behalf. Dude, that's not just theft. That's character assassination. They're setting you up to look like the irresponsible one while they're literally stealing your inheritance. After Tyler left, I sat in my car, making the phone call I'd been dreading. Harold Bennett had been the family lawyer for 15 years, handling everything from my parents' wills to my grandmother's estate. Jerry, good to hear from you. I heard you finished your MBA program. Congratulations. Mr. Bennett, I need to ask you about my grandmother's trust fund. There seems to be some confusion about withdrawal procedures. A long pause. Jerry, perhaps you should come to my office. This isn't a conversation for the phone. An hour later, I sat across from Harold Bennett in his mahogany-paneled office, watching him review thick legal files with obvious discomfort. Your parents came to me 2 years ago with some concerning information. He began carefully. They presented medical documentation suggesting you were struggling with gambling addiction and poor financial judgment. Medical documentation. What kind of medical documentation? A psychological evaluation from Dr. Richard Stevens indicating you'd been seeking treatment for compulsive gambling behavior. Based on that evaluation, your parents requested emergency custodial control of the trust to protect you from yourself. My blood ran cold. Mr. Bennett, I've never gambled beyond office lottery pools. I've never seen Dr. Richard Stevens. And I definitely never underwent any psychological evaluation. Harold's face went ashen. Jerry, if what you're telling me is true, then your parents committed serious fraud to gain control of your trust fund. Do you still have copies of this supposed medical evaluation? He handed me a folder with trembling hands. The psychological report was detailed, professional-looking, and completely fabricated. It described gambling debts, emotional instability, and poor impulse control, none of which applied to me. But the signature at the bottom belonged to Dr. Richard Stevens, a real psychiatrist whose name I recognized from the hospital where Emma's sister worked. Mr. Bennett, this is forged. My parents created false medical records to steal my inheritance. As I left Harold Bennett's office, one thought consumed my mind. If my parents were willing to forge medical documents and destroy my reputation, what else were they capable of? And more importantly, how could I prove their fraud without destroying our family completely? The answer would come sooner than I expected from a source I'd never anticipated. That evening, I called Emma with the devastating news about the forged psychological evaluation. Her response was immediate and fierce. Jerry, this isn't just family drama anymore. This is criminal fraud. You need a real lawyer, not your family's lawyer, who's clearly been manipulated too. She gave me the number for Sarah Mitchell, an attorney who specialized in estate fraud and fiduciary abuse. Sarah agreed to see me first thing the next morning. Walking into Sarah Mitchell's downtown office, I felt like I was crossing a line I could never uncross. Her receptionist led me to a conference room where Sarah sat reviewing the documents I'd emailed the night before. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Mr. Thompson, I've reviewed your preliminary materials. Before we discuss legal options, I need to examine the original trust documents. Do you have copies? Just what the bank gave me, but Harold Bennett should have the originals. Sarah made some notes. I'm going to request all documentation from Mr. Bennett's office. In the meantime, I want you to obtain your medical records from every doctor you've ever seen. we'll need to prove you never received treatment from Dr. Stevens. As we talked through the legal implications, Sarah's expression grew increasingly serious. Jerry, if we can prove document forgery and fraud, your parents could face federal charges. Are you prepared for that possibility? The weight of her question settled on my shoulders. Was I ready to potentially send my own parents to prison? But then I thought about Madison's shocked face when she learned the truth about Tyler's concern for my supposed financial problems, about the systematic destruction of my reputation and future. Yes, I said firmly. I'm prepared for whatever it takes to get justice. Good. Now there's something else I want to investigate. Trust documents from that era often contained specific safeguard clauses, especially if the grantor suspected potential family conflicts. I'd like to contact your grandmother's original attorney. She used someone different from Harold Bennett. According to the trust paperwork, the original attorney was Donald Clark from Clark & Associates. He specialized in protective estate planning. That afternoon, Sarah and I drove to the offices of Clark & Associates in the historic district downtown. Donald Clark had to be in his 70s, with white hair and kind eyes behind thick glasses. When Sarah explained our situation, his expression immediately shifted to one of knowing concern. Ah, Mrs. Rose Thompson's trust. I remember her well. Lovely woman, but very concerned about family dynamics and potential future conflicts. He pulled a thick file from a locked cabinet behind his desk. Your grandmother was quite specific about her concerns regarding your parents' favoritism toward your sister. She wanted to ensure your inheritance remained protected. My heart pounded as Donald spread the original documents across his desk. She insisted on what we call a safeguard clause, a protection mechanism that most families never discover because it only activates under specific circumstances. What kind of circumstances, I asked? Unauthorized depletion of the trust funds? Mrs. Thompson was worried that your parents might attempt to redirect your inheritance to Madison. So she built in an automatic response system. Sarah leaned forward intently. What does this safeguard clause actually do? Donald pointed to a paragraph buried deep in the legal language. If the trust balance falls below $10,000 due to improper withdrawals, it triggers an immediate audit process. But that's not the most interesting part. He turned to another page. Your grandmother established a secondary account unknown to your parents containing backup funds. If the safeguard activates, it automatically begins legal proceedings to recover the stolen funds from whoever authorized the improper withdrawals. Backup funds. I could barely believe what I was hearing. Mrs. Thompson deposited an additional $150,000 in a separate protective account. If your main trust was ever depleted improperly, this money would become available to restore your inheritance, plus legal fees and penalties. Sarah's eyes were bright with understanding. So Jerry's parents don't just owe him $300,000. They're liable for penalties and legal fees on top of the principal amount. Exactly. And here's the crucial detail. The safeguard clause doesn't require Jerry to file any lawsuits or take any action. Once triggered, it automatically initiates recovery proceedings against the parties who authorized the improper withdrawals. Donald pulled out another document. Your grandmother also required that I maintain annual oversight of the trust even after transferring primary management to the bank. I've been monitoring the account status and frankly, I've been expecting this conversation. You've known about the withdrawals, I asked. I've been watching the systematic depletion for 2 years, waiting for the account to hit the trigger threshold. Based on the bank records I receive quarterly that happened last week when your parents attempted to access additional funds. Sarah and I exchanged glances. Are you saying the safeguard has already been activated? Donald smiled grimly. As of yesterday morning, yes. The legal proceedings have automatically commenced. Your parents' personal assets are being frozen pending a full investigation, and recovery demands have been sent to their attorneys. I felt like the room was spinning. They don't know yet, do they? The first they'll hear about it is when the bank calls them this afternoon about their frozen accounts. Your grandmother designed this system to be completely automatic, removing the burden of confrontation from her grandchildren. Driving back to Sarah's office, I struggled to process the magnitude of what was happening. My grandmother, even in death, had protected me from my parents' greed with a sophistication I'd never imagined. Jerry, there's something else we need to consider, Sarah said as we walked back into her building. If the safeguard system is automatic, your parents are going to receive legal notices today. They'll know their scheme has been discovered, which means they'll probably try to contact me, or worse, they might try to manipulate you into stopping the legal proceedings. You need to be prepared for them to claim this is all a misunderstanding, that they were protecting the money for you, anything to avoid the consequences. That evening, I sat with Emma at her apartment, my phone turned off waiting for the inevitable explosion. We'd ordered Chinese takeout, but neither of us had much appetite. The fortune cookies sat unopened on her coffee table, somehow seeming ominous. "How do you feel?" Emma asked, holding my hand. Terrified, relieved, guilty, vindicated. I keep thinking about how proud Grandma Rose would be that her plan worked, but also how heartbroken she'd be that it was necessary. Around 9 o'clock, Emma's phone rang. Unknown number. "Jerry, it's Madison. Are you there?" Something terrible has happened. Mom and Dad got some legal papers today and they're freaking out. They're saying there's been some mistake with your trust fund, that someone's trying to frame them for fraud. They want to talk to you immediately. Emma put the call on speaker. Madison's voice sounded panicked and confused. "They keep saying you'll understand once they explain everything, that this is all a computer error or a misunderstanding with the bank. Dad's been calling Harold Bennett nonstop, but he's not returning calls." "Madison, where are you right now?" "At their house." "Jerry, I've never seen them like this." Mom's crying and Dad looks like he's seen a ghost. They're desperate to reach you. I took a deep breath. Tomorrow I would face my parents with the truth about their crimes and the consequences of their choices. But tonight I needed to prepare for the confrontation that would either destroy our family forever or force them to finally face the reality of what they'd done. The safeguard my grandmother had put in place was working exactly as she'd planned. Now I had to find the courage to see it through to the end. The next morning, I drove to my childhood home with Sarah Mitchell's business card in my pocket and a recording app activated on my phone. Sarah had confirmed that Illinois was a one-party consent state, meaning I could legally record conversations as long as I was a participant. My parents' house looked exactly the same as always. Perfectly manicured lawn, pristine flower beds, not a shingle out of place. But I knew that behind that suburban facade, panic was consuming the people who'd raised me. Madison's car was already in the driveway. She'd texted earlier saying she wanted to be there for moral support, having spent the night wrestling with her own guilt about unknowingly participating in their scheme. I rang the doorbell instead of using my key, a small declaration that I no longer considered myself a welcome member of this household. My mother answered the door, and the change in her appearance shocked me. Susan Thompson had always been immaculate. Hair perfectly styled, makeup, flawless clothing coordinated. The woman standing before me looked like she'd aged 5 years overnight. Her eyes were red and swollen, her usually perfect hair uncombed. "Jerry, thank God you're here. We need to talk immediately. There's been a terrible mistake." Dad appeared behind her in the hallway, his corporate executive demeanor completely shattered. Robert Thompson commanded boardrooms and negotiated million-dollar deals, but today he looked like a desperate, cornered man. "Son, sit down. We'll explain everything. Someone's trying to destroy our family with false accusations." I followed them into the living room where Madison sat, curled in the corner of the sectional sofa, looking miserable. The coffee table was covered with legal documents and bank statements, evidence of their frantic attempts to understand how their scheme had been discovered. "Jerry, we never intended for any of this to happen." Mom began, her voice shaking. When Madison needed help with her business, we thought we were doing the right thing by using family money. My money, I said quietly. You used my money. Dad's face flushed red. It's family money, Jerry. Your grandmother wanted the family to be taken care of. Madison needed help and you were away at school, so we made a decision. You forged medical documents claiming I had a gambling addiction. The room went silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Madison's eyes went wide. Apparently this was news to her, too. We had to protect the money, Mom said desperately. Harold Bennett said there were legal requirements for accessing trust funds early. We were protecting your inheritance from being lost to bad decisions. What bad decisions? I was in graduate school. The only money I spent was on tuition and ramen noodles. Dad stood up and began pacing, his lawyer instincts kicking in despite his obvious panic. Jerry, you have to understand. Madison's business was a real opportunity. We thought we were making an investment that would benefit the whole family. For $45,000, what about the monthly payments? What about her car? Her apartment? Her European vacation? Those were temporary supports while she established herself, Dad insisted. We always planned to pay it back. Madison finally spoke up, her voice barely a whisper. With what money? My business failed 8 months ago. I haven't had any income since then. The family's carefully constructed narrative was crumbling in real time. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the coffee table between us. I need you both to understand something. The trust fund had protective measures you didn't know about. Grandma Rose suspected this might happen, and she built in safeguards. Mom's face went white. What kind of safeguards? The kind that automatically triggered legal proceedings when you emptied my account. Your personal assets have been frozen. You're facing federal fraud charges for the forged medical documents, and you're liable for full restitution plus penalties. Dad collapsed into his armchair like a deflated balloon. That's impossible. Rose never mentioned any additional protections. Because she didn't trust you, and apparently she was right not to. For several minutes, nobody spoke. The weight of their predicament settled over my parents like a heavy blanket. They were finally understanding that their scheme hadn't just been discovered, it had triggered an automatic system designed specifically to catch and punish their type of theft. How much trouble are we in? Mom asked, her voice barely audible. I pulled out the legal documents Sarah had prepared for me. Criminal fraud charges for the forged medical records, civil liability for $300,000 in stolen funds plus $150,000 in penalties. Possible prison sentences of 5 to 10 years each. Madison gasped. Prison? Mom and Dad could go to prison. Jerry, you have to help us. Dad pleaded, abandoning all pretense of innocence. We're your family. Surely there's a way to work this out privately. The way you worked things out when you told Aunt Linda I was financially irresponsible. The way you worked things out when you spread lies about me to Tyler and our other friends. Mom started crying again. We were just trying to protect Madison. She needed help and you were doing fine in school. We thought we could replace the money before you graduated. Replace it with what you spent everything and more. Madison's business failed. Your own savings are gone. You even embezzled from Dad's company retirement fund, didn't you? The look that passed between my parents confirmed my suspicion. Their theft had expanded beyond just my inheritance. How did you know about that? Dad asked weakly. Because I hired a real attorney who investigated everything. Sarah Mitchell specializes in financial fraud cases. She found the irregularities in your retirement account withdrawals. Madison stood up suddenly, her face flushed with anger and shame. You embezzled from your own company? What other lies have you been telling? Madison, calm down, Mom said. We were trying to protect both of you. Protect us? You destroyed Jerry's reputation, stole his future, and committed crimes that could send you to prison? How is that protecting anyone? The family meeting continued for another hour, but the essential damage was done. My parents' defensive anger gradually shifted to desperate bargaining, then to resigned acceptance of their situation. "What happens next?" Dad asked finally. "You'll be contacted by federal investigators within the week. The state attorney's office is building a case for wire fraud, document forgery, and embezzlement. Your only option is full cooperation and restitution." "And if we cooperate fully," Mom asked. "Sarah thinks you might avoid prison time if you make complete restitution and accept responsibility. But your reputations, your careers, and your financial security are finished." As I prepared to leave, Madison walked me to the door. "Jerry, I'm so sorry. I'll pay back every penny I can, even if it takes years." "Madison, you were manipulated too. But yes, we'll figure out a fair repayment plan." "What about them?" She gestured back toward the living room where our parents sat in stunned silence. "They made their choices, Madison. Now they have to live with the consequences." Driving away from that house, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Justice was being served, but it came at the cost of destroying the family structure I'd grown up believing in. My parents weren't the people I'd thought they were, and that realization was almost as painful as their theft. But for the first time in months, I also felt something I'd almost forgotten: hope. My grandmother's wisdom and foresight had protected me from their greed. The truth was finally exposed. And tomorrow I could start rebuilding my life on a foundation of honesty instead of lies. The reckoning was far from over, but the hardest part, confronting the people who'd betrayed me, was finally behind me. 3 days after our family confrontation, the formal consequences began cascading down on my parents with devastating efficiency. I was at my office when Sarah Mitchell called with the first update. "Jerry, the federal investigation has expanded beyond your trust fund case. Your father's employer, Meridian Financial Group, received the fraud allegations and launched their own internal audit." "What did they find?" "Your father had been systematically borrowing against his retirement account and company expense fund to maintain the lifestyle your parents established while spending your inheritance. We're talking about an additional $200,000 in unauthorized transactions." I sank into my desk chair, overwhelmed by the expanding scope of my parents' deception. "So the total theft is what, $500,000 now? More than that when you factor in penalties, interest, and legal fees. But there's something else, Jerry. Meridian Financial terminated your father this morning and filed criminal charges against him for embezzlement. Robert Thompson, Senior Vice President of Corporate Development, had built his career over 25 years at Meridian. His termination would be industry news, destroying any chance of future employment in finance. That evening, Emma and I were cooking dinner when my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized Madison's panicked breathing immediately. "Jerry, you need to come over right now. Mom collapsed at the grocery store this afternoon. She's at Riverside Hospital." 20 minutes later, I found Madison in the cardiac wing waiting room, looking exhausted and frightened. The doctors think it was a panic attack combined with exhaustion. Her blood pressure spiked dangerously high. "Where's Dad?" "Meeting with criminal attorneys downtown. He's been gone since this morning, trying to find someone who will take his case." We sat together in uncomfortable plastic chairs, watching families deal with various medical emergencies. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here we were, supporting our mother through a health crisis caused by the consequences of her own criminal behavior. "Jerry, can I ask you something?" Madison's voice was small and uncertain. "Of course." "Do you think there's any way they can recover from this financially, but also as people?" I considered her question carefully. Our parents were facing criminal charges, complete financial ruin, and social disgrace. Dad's career was over. Mom's health was deteriorating under the stress. Their comfortable suburban life was about to disappear entirely. I honestly don't know, Madison. They created this situation through years of lies and theft. Recovery would require them to completely rebuild their characters, not just their finances. The next morning brought another call from Sarah Mitchell, this time with news that made my stomach churn. Jerry, Detective Lisa Morgan from the Financial Crimes Unit wants to interview you this week. The district attorney is building cases against both your parents, and they need your testimony. What kind of cases? Your father's embezzlement from Meridian Financial is a federal crime because the company handles interstate financial transactions. Your mother faces conspiracy charges for her role in forging the medical documents and enabling the embezzlement. Detective Morgan turned out to be a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who specialized in white-collar crime. We met at the police station downtown in a sterile interview room that made everything feel surreal. Mr. Thompson, I need you to understand that your cooperation is crucial for these prosecutions. Your parents committed serious crimes that extend far beyond your family situation. She spread out a timeline of financial transactions that painted a devastating picture. Your father's embezzlement from Meridian began small. Unauthorized expense reimbursements inflated travel costs. But as your trust fund money ran out, his theft escalated dramatically. How dramatically? In the past 6 months, he's stolen nearly $120,000 from his employer. Company credit cards, forged approval signatures, phantom consulting contracts. Your father became quite creative in his criminal methods. The man I'd known as a respected corporate executive had transformed into a common thief driven by desperation to maintain the lifestyle he'd built on stolen money. Detective Morgan, what will happen to them? If convicted on all charges, your father faces 5 to 10 years in federal prison. Your mother could receive 3 to 7 years for conspiracy and document fraud. These aren't cases where people typically avoid jail time. Walking out of that police station, I felt the full weight of how completely my family had disintegrated. Emma was waiting in the parking lot, and I collapsed into her passenger seat, feeling emotionally drained. "How bad is it?" she asked gently. "They're probably going to prison him, both of them, for years." That weekend, I received an unexpected call from my Uncle David Dad's younger brother. David lived in California and had always been the more responsible sibling in their family. "Jerry, I just heard about Bob and Susan's legal troubles. This is unbelievable." "Uncle David, how much did you know about their financial situation?" "Nothing. Absolutely nothing. When I visited last Christmas, everything seemed normal. Better than normal, actually. Their house, their cars, Madison's obvious prosperity. I was impressed by how well everyone was doing. It was all funded by theft. Jerry, I need you to know something. About 15 years ago, your father borrowed $50,000 from me for what he said was a temporary business investment opportunity. He promised to repay it within 6 months. My heart sank. He never paid you back, did he? No. And when I asked about it, he claimed the investment had gone bad, and he was working on recovering the funds. I eventually wrote it off as a family loss, but now I'm wondering if this pattern goes back much further than anyone realized. Uncle David's revelation suggested that my father's willingness to steal from family members predated even my grandmother's death. The systematic theft of my inheritance might have been just the latest escalation in a long pattern of financial deception. Uncle David, would you be willing to testify about the loan if prosecutors ask? Absolutely. If Bob's been living off stolen money for years, he needs to face the consequences. By Monday morning, local news outlets had picked up the story of Robert Thompson's termination and criminal charges. Meridian Financial issued a statement about their cooperation with federal investigators, effectively destroying any hope Dad had of maintaining his professional reputation. Madison called me at work, crying. "Jerry, there are reporters outside Mom and Dad's house. The neighbors are all staring. Mrs. Patterson from next door asked me if it's true that our parents are criminals." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That they stole your inheritance and embezzled from Dad's company. I'm tired of protecting them from the consequences of their choices." That evening, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible just weeks earlier. I called my parents' house and asked to speak with both of them together. "Jerry, thank God," Mom said immediately. "We've been hoping you'd reconsider helping us fight these charges." "I'm not calling to help you fight anything. I'm calling to tell you that I'm going to testify against you in the criminal trials, both of you." Silence. "Jerry, you can't be serious." Dad said finally. We're your parents. Family doesn't destroy family. Family doesn't steal from family either, but you did. And now you're going to face the full consequences of your choices, just like Grandma Rose planned. This will destroy us completely, Mom whispered. You destroyed yourselves. I'm just making sure the truth gets told in court. As I hung up the phone, Emma squeezed my hand supportively. How do you feel? Like I'm finally free. Free from their lies, their manipulation, and their attempts to make me responsible for fixing their mistakes. The legal avalanche was gathering momentum, and there was no stopping it now. My parents had built their comfortable life on a foundation of theft and deception, and that foundation was finally crumbling under the weight of truth and justice. Tomorrow would bring new developments, new revelations, and new consequences. But tonight, for the first time since discovering their betrayal, I felt genuinely hopeful about my future. 2 weeks later, the safeguard system my grandmother had put in place completed its work with ruthless efficiency. Sarah Mitchell called me on a Tuesday morning with news that would have seemed impossible just a month earlier. Jerry, the automatic asset recovery process has succeeded beyond our expectations. Your parents have been forced to liquidate virtually everything they own. Everything. The house, both cars, jewelry, artwork, even your father's golf club membership. The court-appointed trustee has converted everything to cash and deposited $450,000 into the restoration account. I sat in my office staring out at the city skyline, trying to process the magnitude of what was happening. So my trust fund will be fully restored. Fully restored plus penalties, legal fees, and additional compensation for the emotional damage. You'll actually end up with more money than your grandmother originally left you. But the financial recovery was just the beginning of how completely the tables had turned. That afternoon, Madison called with an update that left me speechless. Jerry, Mom, and Dad are moving into a one-bedroom apartment downtown. They're selling furniture just to pay the rent deposit. How are they handling it? Dad seems completely broken. He sits in the empty house staring at the walls where their family photos used to hang. Mom keeps trying to maintain a positive attitude, but I can see she's falling apart. The following week brought the most shocking revelation yet. Detective Morgan contacted me with news about the expanded investigation. Mr. Thompson, we've discovered something that changes everything about this case. Your parents weren't just stealing from you and your father's employer. What do you mean? We found evidence that they've been systematically embezzling from Madison's trust fund as well. The fund your grandmother established specifically for her education and future. My blood ran cold. Madison has a trust fund too. $75,000 set up the same way yours was. But your parents have been withdrawing from both accounts for years, using Madison's money to fund her lifestyle while making her believe she was receiving their generosity. Does Madison know? We're informing her this afternoon. The pattern suggests your parents plan to eventually claim both trust funds were depleted by your poor financial decisions, making you responsible for Madison's financial struggles too. When I called Madison that evening, she was beyond devastated. Jerry, they've been stealing from me too. All this time when I thought they were being generous, they were actually giving me my own money and planning to blame you when it ran out. Madison, I'm so sorry. Don't you dare apologize. You're the victim here, not me. But Jerry, this means they were planning to destroy your relationship with me permanently. When my money ran out, I would have believed you were responsible for my financial problems. The sophistication of our parents' long-term manipulation was breathtaking. They'd engineered a scheme that would have left both Madison and me financially ruined while destroying our relationship with each other, all while positioning themselves as the generous, long-suffering parents trying to help their troubled children. There's something else, Madison continued. I talked to Harold Bennett today. He's cooperating with investigators now, and he told me something that will shock you. What? Our parents came to him 5 years ago asking about ways to access our trust funds early. They've been planning this theft since before Grandma Rose even died. 5 years ago, Madison, that means they were planning to steal our inheritance while Grandma was still alive. Harold said they asked hypothetical questions about what would happen if one of the beneficiaries became financially irresponsible. They were researching how to justify taking our money years before they actually did it. That weekend, I received an unexpected visit from Kevin Walsh, the expensive criminal attorney my parents had somehow managed to hire despite their depleted finances. Mr. Thompson, I represent your parents in their criminal cases. I'm here to discuss a possible plea agreement. Kevin Walsh was exactly what I'd expected. Silver-haired, expensive suit, the kind of lawyer who specialized in helping wealthy criminals minimize consequences. What kind of plea agreement? Your parents are prepared to plead guilty to all charges in exchange for reduced sentences. They're also willing to make full restitution and provide complete cooperation with ongoing investigations. In exchange for what? They're hoping you might provide a character reference for sentencing emphasizing their roles as loving parents who made poor decisions rather than calculating criminals. I stared at this man, amazed by his client's continued attempts at manipulation. Mr. Walsh, my parents are calculating criminals. They forged medical documents, embezzled from multiple sources, destroyed reputations, and planned to frame me for their crimes. There's nothing loving about any of that. Mr. Thompson, consider the possibility of mercy. Prison sentences would destroy what's left of your family permanently. My family was destroyed the moment my parents decided to steal from their own children. Prison sentences are just the consequence of choices they made willingly and repeatedly. Kevin Walsh left empty-handed, but his visit had clarified something important for me. My parents still didn't understand the magnitude of their betrayal. They still viewed themselves as loving parents who'd made mistakes, not as criminals, who'd systematically abused their children's trust for years. The next Monday brought news that completed the reversal of our family's power dynamics. Sarah Mitchell called with an update from Meridian Financial's internal investigation. Jerry, your father's former company, has uncovered evidence of embezzlement going back 7 years. The total theft from Meridian alone exceeds $300,000. $300,000. How is that possible? Your father was very skilled at hiding his tracks. Phantom consulting agreements, inflated expense reports, unauthorized bonuses to himself. He'd been systematically looting his employer long before he touched your trust fund. So the criminal charges are going to be much more serious than we thought. Federal prosecutors are talking about a potential 20-year sentence if he's convicted on all counts. Your father wasn't just stealing to support Madison's lifestyle. He was funding an entire fantasy of wealth and success that never really existed. That evening, Emma and I were having dinner when Madison called sobbing. Jerry, I went to see them at their apartment today. It's horrible. One tiny room with a kitchenette, no furniture except a card table, and 2 folding chairs. Dad was wearing clothes I remember from 10 years ago. How did they seem emotionally completely defeated? Mom keeps apologizing over and over, saying she never meant for things to go this far. Dad just sits there staring at nothing. I think the reality is finally hitting them. What reality? That they're going to prison, Jerry. Kevin Walsh told them the prosecutors aren't interested in plea bargains. They want maximum sentences to send a message about white-collar crime. 2 days later, I received a handwritten letter from my mother, the first direct communication from either parent since our confrontation. The letter was written on cheap notebook paper, her usually perfect handwriting shaky and uncertain. Jerry, I know we've lost the right to call ourselves your parents. I know you'll probably never forgive us for what we've done to you and Madison. But I need you to understand that we never meant to hurt you. We thought we were helping the family, and we convinced ourselves that we could fix everything before you found out. I realize now how selfish and criminal our actions were. I don't expect mercy, but I wanted you to know that we're sorry for destroying your trust and your future. We love you, even though we've lost the right to say so. Reading that letter, I felt a complex mix of emotions: anger, sadness, pity, and something that might have been the beginning of eventual forgiveness. My parents had indeed destroyed our family, but they were also facing complete ruin as a result of their choices. What are you thinking? Emma asked, reading over my shoulder. I'm thinking that justice is being served, but it doesn't feel as satisfying as I thought it would. They're going to lose everything: their freedom, their reputation, their financial security, their family relationships. Sometimes I wonder if the punishment fits the crime. Jerry, they didn't just steal money. They systematically destroyed trust, manipulated emotions, and planned to frame you for their crimes. The punishment absolutely fits the crime. Emma was right, but I was beginning to understand that justice and satisfaction weren't the same thing. My parents were facing complete consequences for their actions, which was exactly what they deserved. But watching their destruction didn't heal the emotional damage they'd caused or restore the innocence I'd lost about family loyalty. The tables had turned completely. My inheritance was restored with significant additional compensation. My reputation was cleared. My future was secure. Meanwhile, my parents faced poverty, prison, and permanent disgrace. But the final chapter of this story wouldn't be about their punishment. It would be about what I chose to do with the hard-won wisdom and financial freedom their betrayal had ultimately provided. 6 months after that devastating discovery at First National Bank, I sat in federal courthouse downtown, watching my parents receive their sentences. The judge's words were measured but firm as she addressed them directly. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, you betrayed the fundamental trust that should exist between parents and children. You stole not just money, but peace of mind, family security, and faith in human decency. While I acknowledge your expressions of remorse, the systematic nature of your crimes demands significant consequences. Robert Thompson, 8 years in federal prison for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy. Susan Thompson, 5 years in federal prison for conspiracy document forgery and enabling financial crimes. As the bailiff led my parents away in handcuffs, I felt no triumph, only a deep sadness for how completely they destroyed themselves through greed and deception. Madison sat beside me quietly, crying for the parents we thought we knew. The financial restoration had been completed weeks earlier. My trust fund now contained $520,000. The original $300,000 plus recovered penalties and legal fees. Madison's trust fund had been restored to its full $75,000 with additional compensation for the emotional damage she'd suffered. But the real transformation had happened in ways money couldn't measure. Jerry, what are you planning to do now? Sarah Mitchell asked as we left the courthouse together. I've been thinking about that a lot. This whole experience taught me something important about how the legal system handles family financial abuse. There are probably thousands of people going through similar situations with no protection. Over the following weeks, I developed a plan that would honor my grandmother's wisdom while helping others avoid the devastation my family had experienced. Using a portion of my restored inheritance, I established the Rose Thompson Foundation for Family Financial Protection. The foundation's mission was simple: provide legal assistance, education, and advocacy for families dealing with financial abuse and elder exploitation. We would help people understand protective estate planning, recognize warning signs of financial manipulation, and access legal resources when family members betrayed their trust. Emma quit her auditing job to become the foundation's financial director. Her background in forensic accounting made her perfect for helping families document and recover from financial abuse. I can't think of anything more meaningful than preventing other families from going through what yours experienced, she told me as we painted our new office space. Madison surprised me with her own decision. Jerry, I want to work for the foundation too. I know what it feels like to be manipulated and lied to by people you trust. Maybe I can help other victims understand they're not alone. Madison, you don't have to do that out of guilt about what happened. I'm not doing it out of guilt. I'm doing it because I want to turn the worst experience of my life into something positive for other people. 6 months later, the Rose Thompson Foundation had helped 12 families recover stolen assets and secure protection for their financial futures. Our legal clinic provided free consultation for suspected financial abuse cases. Our educational programs taught families about protective estate planning and recognizing manipulation tactics. The most rewarding case involved an elderly man whose adult children were systematically draining his retirement accounts. Using the documentation techniques we'd learned from my own case, we helped him recover over $200,000 and secure legal protection from future exploitation. "Mr. Thompson," he told me after his case was resolved, "you saved my dignity and my future. I can't thank you enough." "Sir, my grandmother saved both of us. I'm just passing along her wisdom." Emma and I married the following spring in a small ceremony attended by Madison, our close friends and several families we'd helped through the foundation. As we exchanged vows, I thought about how my grandmother's foresight had not only protected my inheritance, but led me to a life purpose I'd never imagined. Madison had enrolled in law school planning to specialize in elder law and family financial protection. "I want to help write better laws that protect people from what our parents did to us," she explained during one of our monthly dinners. "Are you happy with that decision?" I asked her. "Happier than I've ever been. For the first time in my life, I'm earning everything through my own work instead of living off someone else's money. It feels incredible." The question of our parents remained complicated. They were serving their sentences at different federal facilities, and both had been writing letters expressing remorse and asking for visits. Madison had chosen to maintain limited contact, visiting them twice since their sentencing. I had decided differently. While I'd forgiven them in my heart for my own emotional health, I wasn't ready for reconciliation. Their betrayal had been too systematic, too manipulative, and too damaging for me to simply return to family relationships as if nothing had happened. "Do you think you'll ever visit them?" Emma asked one evening as we reviewed foundation cases. "Maybe someday. When I'm confident that I can see them without it being emotionally destructive for me. But that day hasn't come yet. There's no timeline for forgiveness, Jerry. Take all the time you need." 2 years after their sentencing, I received a letter from my father that was different from his previous attempts at contact. Instead of asking for forgiveness or visits, he wrote about his work in the prison's financial literacy program. "Jerry, I'm teaching other inmates about the warning signs of white-collar crime and financial addiction. It's the first meaningful work I've done in years. I know I can never undo the damage I caused, but maybe I can prevent other people from making the same destructive choices I made. I don't expect you to respond to this letter, but I wanted you to know that your work with the foundation inspired me to try to make amends through service to others." Reading that letter, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but a recognition that people could change even after causing tremendous damage. What do you think I showed Emma the letter? I think your father might finally be becoming the person he should have been all along. Whether that changes your relationship with him is entirely up to you. That weekend, Madison and I visited my grandmother's grave together, something we'd started doing monthly since the foundation's launch. "Grandma Rose, your safeguard system worked perfectly," Madison said, placing fresh flowers on the headstone. "Not just the financial protections, but the life lessons, too." Standing there, I reflected on the journey from that devastating day at the bank to this moment of purpose and peace. My grandmother's wisdom had protected more than just my inheritance. It had guided me toward a life of meaning and service that I'd never have discovered otherwise. "Jerry, do you ever wonder what would have happened if our parents hadn't stolen the money?" Madison asked as we walked back to our cars. "Sometimes, but honestly, I think we're better people because of what we went through. We learned who we really are when everything falls apart, and we discovered that we're stronger and more principled than we ever knew. Plus, think about all the families we've helped because of our experience." Exactly. Grandma Rose's money is doing exactly what she would have wanted, protecting families and teaching the next generation about integrity and justice. That evening, Emma and I sat on our apartment balcony, watching the sunset over the city. The Rose Thompson Foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined, and we were planning to expand our services to include financial abuse prevention programs for schools and community centers. "Are you happy, Jerry?" Emma asked, taking my hand. "Completely. I have meaningful work, a woman I love, a restored relationship with my sister, and financial security I've earned through helping others. Most importantly, I know who I am and what I stand for. Even after everything your family put you through, especially because of everything they put me through. Sometimes the worst betrayals teach us the most important lessons about loyalty, integrity, and the kind of people we want to be. My phone buzzed with a text from one of our foundation clients. Mr. Thompson wanted to let you know the court ruled in our favor today. My father's assets have been protected from my brother's theft attempts. Thank you for teaching us to fight for what's right. Messages like that arrived almost daily, now reminders that my grandmother's legacy of protection and justice was continuing to help families across the country. You know what the best part is? I told Emma. Every family we help proves that Grandma Rose was right. People will try to take advantage of trust and generosity, but there are ways to protect yourself and fight back when it happens. And sometimes fighting back leads to something even better than what you had before. She was absolutely right. My parents' betrayal had destroyed one version of my family, but it had led to something much more authentic and meaningful, a life built on truth service and genuine love, rather than lies, manipulation, and false loyalty. As we sat there planning our future together, I realized that justice had been served in ways I'd never expected. My parents faced the consequences of their choices. My inheritance was restored and being used for good. Madison and I had grown closer than ever. And I discovered a life purpose that honored both my grandmother's wisdom and my own values. The trust fund that was supposed to be my financial foundation had become something much more valuable, the cornerstone of a life dedicated to protecting others from the kind of betrayal I'd experienced. My grandmother would have been proud. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever had someone you trusted completely betray you in a way that shook your faith in human nature? How did you find the strength to rebuild and move forward? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's going through a similar situation. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help others find it. Subscribe to hear more stories about justice, redemption, and the power of standing up for what's right. And please share this with anyone who might need to hear that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of the story. Sometimes it's the beginning of something much better. Thank you for listening, and remember, the people who truly love you will never ask you to accept betrayal in the name of family loyalty. Trust your instincts, stand up for justice, and never stop believing that the truth has the power to set you free.